separation is like the whole piece of puzzle, right? And you're just taking one piece and that's it. Sometimes I don't know what to say at the beginning of my videos because sometimes I feel like I have to suck up to society. And I'm putting that harshly because that's acknowledging the fact that there's a lot of still I go through resentment because I feel like ever since, I don't know, as far as I can remember, I felt kind of like, why am I doing this for you? Why am I doing these rules? Why am I following these cockamamie, absolutely absurd, pathetic, like narrow-minded views of how to just be? I understood that when I was a kid. I didn't know the words for it, but now I still don't know much of the words for it, but the way I'm going to put it is through ways that I personally, for me, have come to understand. So this video is about, yes, it's going to sound like I'm complaining, but it's an expression of what I feel is necessary for change, at least for myself, because if I don't acknowledge it, it's just going to get buried, and it's going to get buried, and it's just going to be part of the shadow, and I'm just going to be more intense and more intimidating than what I necessarily need to be. So yeah, like very simple things like having like the path that I create, and I mean, this is where I acknowledge this whole thing because let's say I'm like walking somewhere and there's not enough space or like there's no flow. I like, for me, flow is like flow of literally everything. But the thing is, it's not about me. It's not about things flowing for me. It's about my, openness to flow with that, flow with life itself. When I say life, I don't mean the egoic versions of human conditioned belief of life. Right? It's the flow of life that it's like, okay, there's a block here. Maybe someone put it there. Maybe that's just the way they put it in because they have this, call it narrow-minded view of things. That's their thing. Going around that, right? Going around that. I'm not going to go and knock on their door and be like, oh, your house is in the way. It's kind of like talking to a person. It's like, your face is in the way. What does that do? Like, I mean, acknowledging yourself for what you want is more important than that because that's just resistance, right? And yeah. And the other thing too right now is like sometimes I feel like because I have to, I mean, if you look at this astrologically speaking, that's another thing, by the way. When people have this way of speaking or this way of speaking or that way of speaking, and they refer to certain things, like they do the math, like they use language kind of thing, and then they do, let's say for me, I refer to astrology a lot, right? And that's what it is. But I've come to see that there are people who just have either the look on their face, the energy that they, exude, or the comments they, express. They express, it was, instead of just allowing it to be at the moment. So what I've learned to do is this is where I create a lot of like boundaries with certain people because this is the beautiful thing about having Pluto in your chart, and not because it's the chart that creates my life. No, that's nothing to do with that. It's the that whole part of my soul journey. Though I chose to what I chose to choose to be here. See, there's that train of thought. Every time I wish we were just telepathic, because if you could just read my thoughts, you'd be running like 100 fucking thousand millimeters and kilometers a mile, fucking whatever. Okay, just. But, and when I express it through, like, verbally, sometimes things just don't come out. And I feel like that's another thing that I have to work with, and really, when I say work with, I mean like, sometimes it doesn't, and that's what it is. It's not a whole, it is what it is, but it is what it is. Okay, so that's the other part right there. There's that, right there, right there. If I were to ask you, do you understand? It's almost like, for me personally, I feel like it's not doing it for you. I'm doing it for myself. So I feel like, do you understand what I'm saying? Meaning me. It's egoic. I can sense it right away, and it's like I'm seeking validation. Like, what the fuck is that? And that's understandable, because that's another part of the thing I'm still learning to work with. And this is why I love shadow work. Shadow work, real shadow work goes deep into the depths of the depths of the depths. And sometimes it's so deep that when I talked to my dad one time, I got really emotional. This is like years ago. I told him, it's like, I'm trying to be okay. I didn't really say it this way, but I was trying to tell him that I'm trying to be okay, because I didn't really process it yet. Even just the whole idea of having that depth and intensity, that when I talk to people that I've known for most of my life, it's like they swim on the when I communicate with them, or when I relate with them, or when we relate with each other. And more so like when I relate with them. I have to embrace that hybris. In my chart, I have hybris conjunct sun. It's just like, I have to embrace that thing where it's just like, I have to be proud of the fact that I can talk about myself. And that should be okay with people. Be fucking open with what I want to say. But at the same time, really going through the inner work, outside of that, or whatever on your time, your whatever, so that it's not necessarily, it's causing change rather than conflict. Because I find that I used to create more conflict rather than change. So it's the passion and the intensity that will come through, rather than just intensity, intimidation, and like powerlessness. It doesn't help, right? And it's one of those things that, and yeah, humor helps for sure. See, I'm all over the place right now, and that's what it is. Okay, you gotta catch up with me. You gotta stay on track, whatever the fuck that is. I don't like staying on track all the time. I like going with the flow when when I express things, because it feels like every time I talk to certain people, or the people I talk to, they want to get every single fucking thing I'm saying. I'm just like, I feel like that's the conditioning in the fucking 500 years of like language learning, where it's like, every little grammar, fucking grammar, do it, and adverb, blah, 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 and I'm saying, poo, fuck it, because that is, for me, that doesn't work. That has never worked. I still play sometimes like classical, but I feel like, ugh. There's something about it that was kind of like trapping me in. And one thing I enjoyed about it was the company, being in an orchestra. That's one thing. The other one was when I'm just able to express things. But then putting it in a box is kind of like, well, that doesn't make sense. How the fuck do you think people communicate back for the past fucking 100,000 years? Like, and I'm projecting here, I know that. But there's a but. Oral tradition was the most common form of spreading language. I mean, we're just talking about language itself. But and then we get caught in the whole, like, notice how I said people? I was about to project, but I've done that too, where it's like, putting things in a box, putting things in a fucking box, and And it's really that intensity that comes through, that it's like, that's one of the things that I know I cannot change, but I'm sick and tired of having to cater to breastfeeding, general humanity, for not that I don't want to be of service. It's more like I'm trying to be of service. I'm trying to help. But what happens is that there's just that I feel like there's just a little bit too much work when certain things, like for example, like I used to teach, like when I got into teaching, like I kind of made me think about why I got into teaching, and one of those is definitely like honing discipline, right? So, and discipline that is more for myself rather than discipline it's like, well, you have to do this. So I think teaching has taught me that. But at the same time, I'm not going to be able to teach if I don't honor myself and the everything else in all aspects of myself. I find that in most cases, when it comes to any sort of teaching platform or teaching, I have to do that. And it's very suffocating. And I know this is all like, there's a difference between this feeling I sense now that it's like, it's not necessarily ego. The ego is the one where I feel like I have to suppress it because, oh, for the sake of the greater good. Blah, 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 right? But no, it's more for, it's the greater good cannot be the fucking greater good. That's just like a conditioning from the age of Pisces that's like, sacrifice yourself. You don't matter. The society matters. The greater whole matters for the greater good. How the fuck can you be a part of like this greater good? Like, how does nature do it? How does a tree grow if it doesn't find itself nurturing itself? That's part of the whole process. We've forgotten, for many, I would say many humans, have forgotten to nurture themselves. Because when I say nurture themselves, it's this conditioning that the parents have not allowed them to be self-nurturing while also being assisted with that nurturing. Because that's really what parentage is, isn't it? You're assisting, you're guiding babies, toddlers, children, young children, teenagers, until they become adults. You're still doing that. You're assisting them, you're guiding them. You're not telling them what to do. But what we did was the reverse. Or say reverse, whatever. You know, it's toxic. It's fucking damn mother. What, I don't want to say mother, but yeah, fucking toxic. It's disgusting. And it's toxic. That's not healthy. That is not the way to be. I mean, I say be as in be. And I think we also get confused with this whole like lovey-dovey Pollyanna bullshit. That it's like we have to, it's like we're still carrying from the previous times, like the previous 1,000 years or 2,000 whatever fucking years. It's like, oh, it's all from the beginning, ever since the beginning of, I would probably say, astrologically speaking, the age of Leo. It's always been like, because Leo doesn't like stress. Like Leo likes to be good, right? But there's that, it's a twisted perception that there's a collective shadow that started to form that was like, it has to be this way. But that's not true. Heading into this new age of Pisces sort of thing, like we're already kind of in transition into it. Doesn't matter when, okay? The energy that has been for the past, at the very least 12,000 years, has to be altered, has to be opened, has to be, what do you call this? I guess you can say, I don't want to say the word cleansed. That's not, cleansing is assuming that it's dirty. It's not. It's just unconscious. Unconscious is not dirty. Unconscious is not bad. Unconscious is not the opposite of things. Unconscious is that's unconscious. Meaning you just didn't know any better. And for those of us who are continuously awakening, and awakening is awakening is a process. It's not like magic. Oh my God, I am so awakened. I'm so perfect and spiritual. Yeah. So, okay, I'm just gonna give it that stare. So, it's not anything else but what it is. I think, looking at the phrase, it is what it is, that's just what it means, really. It's just acceptance. I saw this quote on, simplicity came to me yesterday, and this is why I posted that video on that music, meditation, whatever. It's about simplicity. I kind of got off track with that video because I don't know if I was just focused or something. I just posted it. I'm like, fuck it. Right, and that's part of the adventure of life. It's just like things are just as they are. When we think things, not only see things, not just things, see things objectively, and not in a way that it's like, I'm not going to do anything or I'm going to do something. It's neither. It's neither passive nor aggressive, no passive aggressive. There is no term for it. It's just be. Right? And you breathe through it. You breathe. This is what one of the what do you call it? The expressions of unconditional love. But we see it as like unconditional love has to be Pollyanna perfect. It's like, okay, seriously? Like, what happens when someone slaps you? Do you do many of the things in the past, like you turn the other cheek, or do you say, what the hell, and then you process it and you're like, where did that come from? Like, so, right? Like, it's this thing, right? It's part of this awakening process. At least for me, what I discovered is like we tend to compare as if, and then even label animals as if it's like when they attack each other, it's almost like we call it animosity because it's from the word animal. Meaning for us, the word animosity means like evil. There's a tinge of that energy in there, right? They're just like, oh, okay, it's evil, animosity, so it's negative, so it's bad, so it must not be the case. So we reject it right away. But I'm like, no, it's a defensive mechanism. So if someone slaps you and it's completely out of like, when you're defending, when there's a difference between reaction and defense, right? Reaction is like, why the fuck did you slap me? I'm going to slap you back. That's anger right there. You're deflecting it. But defensiveness is going like, and then kind of like, I'm pretty sure this is what they teach, or the essence of it, why there's it, in defensive art, any form, whatever it is to defend, not because of anything like, I must protect myself because I'm scared or fear, or I must defend because I want to hurt that person for, it's like, well, how is that anything? How is that, it came to me a few hours ago, or earlier this morning, that when we look at good and bad, it's that duality from the past, and we're still pretty much stuck in the duality. A lot of us are, and I know I have that myself, right? But I think it's not about that. The key here is separation. I'm going to write it down for myself here. Separation or wholeness. Wholeness is not, but it's not good. Right? What did Carl Jung say? I'd rather be whole than good. Exactly. Because if we're separate, we're always going to have that duality of good, bad, and then we're always going to choose one side over the other, this side over the other, and then we're going to switch. Maybe we're going to switch. Maybe we're going to stick with this one. Blah, 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 blah. Whatever. The point is, it's not whole. There's a reason why in quantum physics, they discovered the quantum vacuum. And where's the quantum vacuum? It's pretty much like this void. Ooh, darkness. Ooh. Right. Same thing we do, like astrologically speaking, when we talk about, let's say, like things like Pluto and Scorpio. It's like, ooh, it's la la la, it's sexy. So I like to call it the way we want it to be rather than what it is. When I say what it is, I mean like every person has their own inner Scorpio. Every person has their own inner Pluto. Every person has their own inner sun. Inner this, inner this, inner this. Call it whatever you want. These are labels. As Eckhart puts it, stepping stones. Stepping stones. This is why I use astrology, because it's like, for me, it's a fun thing. And it's funny because it's like, I always get, it's, I always misunderstood for like, oh, you're so obsessed with astrology. I get this energy, it's like, that's all you talk about or something. Like, I've had this before. It's like, why did, so obviously they were projecting. Obviously I was triggering in them something, which is a good thing. That means that it's like, one, they have their own path. Okay, let them take it. But I'm not going to deny the fact that I enjoy it. I'm not going to deny the fact that sometimes I get horny. I watch some sexy movies. Call it porn. Maybe it's not necessarily porn. I'm not into that now because I know that it's unhealthy to watch it. Like, it's like, okay, well then it's a waste of energy, right? And it's literally a waste of energy. Not necessarily be like I'm wasting things. It's not about the negativity of wasting, but it's like, it's not towards, again, that whole wholeness thing. It's separation because it's not facing the darkness within. So, and many, many other things that I like when I say music, I don't want to generalize music. I mean music that I can express for myself. Like, what is Jose's music? What is your music? What is his music? What is their music? What is her music? What is its music? It doesn't matter. Every person, every being, every entity, even the laptop that I'm using right now, even this whole fucking room, this house, this area, this field, this neighborhood, this city, this province, this state, this country, everything has its own way. There's always energies all around. And I think that's a beautiful thing, isn't it? When we start to separate, we start to see it as only that, and we become kind of like, you can say, slaves to the label. So, and that's one of the things I'm still kind of like, I'm jumping ahead here. So what I'm talking about is like, one of the things that I am still working on myself, because you can say I'm trying to embrace all aspects of myself. Like right there, I just burped, right? Honestly, some people would say, excuse me. I don't want to say excuse me. Why? It's a natural reaction. Excuse me for what? When I say that, I mean that that's a resentment coming through. It's like some people say, you have to say excuse me. You have to say, no, you don't tell people that. If they're saying excuse me, meaning because it's like something, it's a word of expression. It's an expression stating that you want to create. It just got darker, didn't it? It's an expression of saying you want to move past something. You could say a different thing. You could say, you could say, you could say, woo, or you can just try to tap them. It's communication. But the idea of saying excuse me, because it's like, oh, you must be polite. You must be doing the good rather than the bad. Again, duality. Right? So, sick and tired of that thing. I'm tired of like feeling like I've just fucking split myself. The other thing is, of course, that whole like, yes, split myself, but wanting to succumb to or cater to people's demands, not because they are asking for it, not because they're demanding anything, but just conditioning. It's like, ugh, it's this egoic sort of like this ego going like, and I have to acknowledge that ego in itself, right? I have to acknowledge, it's like, what is it really trying to say? What is saying, why is it that I don't want to always like, because most of my life I've had to do that. So I had to suppress the other side of like personal freedom, personal, curiosity, being childlike, being just myself and being curious. And, one of the things I used to get judged for a lot is this whole, I have it, if you look at core in your chart, core is like embracing life. I also have it in that same house, it's Apollo, living life. Artemis is similar as well. Just being out there in the wild. Child is the same thing. I have that asteroid in my chart. Again, this is not about astrology itself. I'm using the labels in astrology as a tool to help maybe you understand, but more for myself. I'm sharing you with my story, like I'm sharing with you my story. So the fact that I even corrected myself there is like showing that's like, ugh, I have to like make you understand, like I have to spell it fucking out for everyone. And that's the other thing. It's two-sided where it's like I do have to not necessarily spell it out. I have to express it so that yes, it helps you, but not at the expense of feeling or losing what feels natural. Because I get questioned that quite often. No, not necessarily often, but once, sort of, whatever. You get the point, right? So, and that's one of the things I like to do is like, when you feel the energy and where I'm going, that'll be great. And if you don't really get what I'm saying, that's totally fine too, because there's some things that just, if you don't resonate with what I'm saying, if you don't resonate with it, that's fine. That's fine. I think you know what to instinctively do, right? So here's the thing. That thing, the balance, and that tipping scale balance thing between relationships is one of the things that I noticed. I reminded of it when I was watching this video with Teal Swan, and it was like relationships. Like, oh yeah, that's a big thing. Hello, the Libra thing, right? It might be an identification thing still. Like, yes, it is actually. It's part of it still, but I have to acknowledge that I identify with that as well. Same thing with Pluto. Same thing with the astrology stuff. We all do the same thing. So let's not berate each other for something else that we don't agree with. If you don't agree with something, question it in yourself and why you don't. And if it doesn't feel comfortable naturally to you, like instinctively, intuitively, just like, where you feel, if you don't feel like connecting to, you don't connect to it, like, that's fine. That's what it is. But the moment we start going like attacking each other for it, it's, what is that? Like, do you want to be attacked for something that you, yeah, this is the thing, right? Hurt people hurt people. Hurt people hurt people. And little things like those are part of it, right? It's not little because it's just it's a part of the whole, it's part of the whole fucking puzzle, right? A picture is not just worth 1,000 words. A picture is worth both 1,000 words and 1 word. See, I don't know if that makes sense, but you see the picture and then you see the little things as well. They're both minor and major, minorities and majorities are the same thing. We just perceive that this is one thing over the other, one thing over the other. And this kind of ties in with like the thing that I got people question also. It's like, why do I like underdog languages, for example? As in a little example, right? It's like, well, because I like it. This is what it is. Simple as that. And then why? Bye-bye. Bye-bye. And that's okay, that's a trigger for me. For me, that's a trigger because it's like, you don't accept me because I don't accept myself. And that's another thing I'm working on. So the little things I'm so-called like the ego is sick and tired of, this is what I need to heal. In fact, it's just a little thing I wanted to, as on a side note, it's like, we're not damaged. It is the ego that's damaged. It's the conceptualization of reality that is damaged. But we have to address and acknowledge that the ego, or part of us, right? It's a defense mechanism. We have to, that's the one that needs healing. can't just jump off to the rainbow room and expect to be like, oh, Lida, I'm all healed. Doesn't work that way. And if it does, good luck. Okay. So, going back to what I said earlier about the relationships thing, and I just came to me right away, like before I went to do my cold shower, and it was like, I've always been trying to be like one of those, not one of those, like as if it's like a weird thing, but like branches don't do this. Well, maybe they do. I don't know. I'm not a botanist. I'm not arborist. I don't know what you call them. I don't know. Okay. I'm like a branch trying to, I wrote it down. I'm like a branch trying to capture another branch to grow in the same direction as it does. That doesn't happen, right? You look at all the branches, you just sit with a tree and you just go like, okay, you look at a branch. Maybe some of them might intertwine with each other, but eventually they're going to separate. They're going to go somewhere else. But they're never, if ever, they're not exactly going to be in the same exact direction all the time. Even if they were, you'll see maybe twin branches, like they're kind of going, and then eventually they kind of separate. That's nature. That's every single fucking thing about nature. And I mean that when I say the word fucking there, I don't mean that in like an angry way, because the energy I felt there was just like, oh, I just wanted to say it. You know, having fun with the whole thing as well. And that's one of the things I really need to start embracing, is not only having fun and embracing all aspects of myself, but this whole like, if I were to question something, does this cause me to separate? Or does this bring me towards wholeness? You know, one of the things that caught my attention, the Teal Swan said that it's like, what did she say here? The practice of love is to take all things in existence as a part of the self. And she actually said, you can't just decide to do that overnight. It'll be the most difficult practice you have ever tried to do. Ever. Never tried to do, I don't know, something like that. So understanding, empathy, which is a practice. It has to be a practice. Meaning experience. So, yeah. I think that's it for now. There's a bunch of things that I kind of wrote here. Oh, here, that was one last thing, is that I think that we all kind of have to stop looking at the labels as if looking at like expertise is a label, knowledge is a label. Okay. And if you go deeper in that, you'll know what I mean by that. And if you don't, whatever. And I do that because I'm like, this body language, I'm going like, this whatever. That's resentment. Because usually I want you to read my mind, which is at least right now it's impossible. But what it really means is kind of just to naturally and kindly spell it out. You know, is when we're looking at label, it's the outside that we're seeing rather than the inside, meaning the inner nature of that person, their intentions. So we tend to look at things like expertise rather than experience, right? It's we look at, for example, someone who's like, oh, he went to school for 10 years. He must be so good at what he does. Yeah. Do you want someone to just hire you because you're like, because you have expertise, so to speak, like you have this diploma saying, I'm a teacher. Like I have a diploma. I posted it right here. It's up here. Why do I do that? I'm going to bring that down. Now that I think about it. Because I'm trying to prove to others, it's like, I have this experience. Da, 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 da. That doesn't prove anything. In order for you to really understand what I'm experiencing is that you'd have to have lived my life, or this life that I'm in. Right? You would have to have been like taken over this body from the day I was born and be like, I'm going to live their life. That's not the way it works. So this is why acceptance, meaning in the being, not doing, more in the being actually, maybe some doing, I don't know, but really about being and just like, okay. You take their word for it and it'll show in how they help you and it'll show in how they relate with you. Anyone. Because I've had people who tell me, it's like, I had this one friend who was just like, da 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 da, she would always give me advice, da 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 da, and I just like, tell me about business and all this stuff, like, girl, you haven't even been in one. Why are you giving me advice? Right? As Tony Robbins said, like, I said Tony Robbins? I don't know. Or as one of his best friends says, don't go for someone who gives you advice. Go for someone who's lived it. Something like that. Right? Just like, no. But we get stuck in that. Even if like we've had experience, even if we've had all these things, it's like, it's just, that's not the way it is. Life doesn't work that way. When I say life, I don't mean like 0 to 100. I live this life. No, I mean all of it. The whole fucking multi-cosmic omniverse. Okay? Whatever it is. Existence. Life. Okay? You don't want to compare a fucking diploma, a little piece of paper, because the system says it's like, it's valid, versus life itself. Why? I mean, that's comparing something, an aspect of human conceptualization, which is called like majority minority. It's not really that, but the fact that we're comparing it, period. Right? Diplomas are great because it's like, but again, like labels, stepping stones, because eventually that paper, if you look at it, that paper just says what you've experienced from the time you started to the time in. It's very like right here. It's in a box. It's like measures in a music sheet, like the measure 1, measure 2, measure all those things. Like it's always putting things in a fucking box. So it doesn't work that way. These are stepping stones to help us. Now, tying this in with what I've had to say before, another thing when it comes to things, like I'm still seeing it quite often, and I get triggered by it. Like accents, not necessarily like, it depends on it's not the accent itself, it's where I'm coming from. Let's say I've come from, it depends on my energy. It depends on like how I'm feeling at the moment. And then all of a sudden I wanted to feel like, I just wanted things to be kind of just easy and more relaxed. And all of a sudden I'm trying to watch this thing. Like this one video I talked about, in one post, I talked about this one lady from Galactic Astrology. I didn't understand a thing she was saying because she has this thick accent. But I noticed right away that it was like, oh crap, I'm projecting onto her. But instead, I just like, I noticed I was also kind of projecting onto a system that's very faulty, that's very rooted in unconscious behavior. The over-analytical side of the unconscious, which is similar. It's similar. Instead of letting what has been before, because there's this fear of many things, I'm pretty sure, like And people are going to say, no, 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 you don't know what I'm talking about. You don't have research on it to back it up. Blah, 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 blah. I'm going like strongly with the strengths that I have, which is instinct and from personal experience. It hasn't worked for me. The whole like, when I went to university, I transferred about 2006, back in 2006, and I wanted to do languages because I thought it was like, ooh, it's interesting, it's fun. And I just kind of like, I accepted what they were doing, accepted the system. Everything was pretty much like, most of it was like literally like translated, and then they transitioned to non-translated stuff. Then I started realizing later on that it's like when it comes to fluency, it was a block. And even without the research, I started to notice like, why is there a block? Because what I'm doing is that because it was translated, is that when I understood something for the first time, let's say a concept, even if it's like a concrete thing, like a bag, for example, or like a book, for example, when you say like a book, oh, this is a book. And it's translated, you go, this is a book, and then you see it in German, das ist ein Buch. Right away, your subconscious is automatically going to go switch to what you are subconsciously automated to respond to, meaning what it's conditioning. It's part of conditioning. It's a conditioning process. I don't know what the terms are. I'm not a psychologist. Okay, I'm not any of those things. But even that belief itself, I'm not this, I'm not that. It's almost like I'm suppressing my own personal instinctive knowing just because someone says like, oh, well, you're not a psychologist, so I have to have that. Again, labels. Okay, so, but what I know is the conditioning process is the whole like, what's more automatic? Well, English. For me, it's English. For many other people, it's whatever language it is, right? But language is rooted in communication. But what is communication? People think it's just words. Or people forget, even though they've heard about it, that it's more than that. And why do people forget? Because all they're getting is being told about it. They're not really experiencing it. And what I mean by experience, as in like experience from the very fucking get-go, like zero. So that means any first concept you get in a completely new language, it has nothing to do with the language itself. It is about how the subtleties and the essence and the components of that language, whatever you want to call it, grammar, syntax, blah, 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 that's not what's important. Those are the structures that have been given to the separation. It's like music, like a music sheet, like music ideas coming down, the notes coming together have been broken down into these little bars. In reality, there is no such thing. Of course, we have to adhere to the fact that that's what it is. That's what's happening. But more and more, there's more and more people who are realizing that it's like, all these structures that we've gone through, at least for the past 500 years of academic brainwashing. I want to call it brainwashing because that's a resentment thing. I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure that not all of them intended to do that, and if some did, then that's their problem. Brainwashing or not, that's not the point. What am I going to do about it? So what I did about it was that I got tired of the whole thing. I said, there's a block and I'm not feeling good about it. I'm not feeling good in how I'm like speaking German. It wasn't just coming out. I'm like thinking about it. Why? Because when I'm thinking about it, it's like this part of the brain, apparently it's the conscious part of the brain, is trying to dig in to the mouth of the subconscious. It's like literally shoving your hand down someone's throat and going like okay, and literally like trying to get information, And it can only get a little bit because it's really embedded deep down. But what's embedded deep down is what's automatic. Anything else could have already, or should have, technically would have already been forgotten or stored somewhere else. But it's not going to be automatic, meaning towards fluency, meaning for me at least, was to feel good about how I was expressing myself, because language is a tool of expression, right? Again, tool of expression. It's not expression itself. Tool of communication. It's not communication itself. Tool. It's a part of it. But we see sometimes people who are like language lovers, they get a lot, are still like, okay, do this, I'm going to study this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. You've heard it before. Go on the internet, go on YouTube. Every hour of fucking YouTube, it's like, just learn it, do this in your sleep. Okay, I'm fully saying that because it's like, there's resentment there. I know that. But it doesn't negate the fact that this whole thing, this brainwashing or not, whatever, for the past at least 500 years, maybe. Because I read somewhere on Wikipedia, on Wikipedia it said apparently like that the whole, it stemmed from like teaching Latin because of academia. But I'm like, well, you can do that with Latin because Latin carries no culture anymore. The people are dead, meaning like dead as in like that. When culture starts to dissipate, when it starts to disappear, and it's just gone, all that's left, and then all you're carrying with it, and you're teaching it through like the whole like vocabulary, grammar, studying shit, and all that shit. What's happening? You're just carrying the content. You're just carrying the knowledge behind it. But is it an experience? No, it's not. In other words, when I say experience, I mean it's not being embodied, starting with like the brain, well, the subconscious, really. And to do that, it has to be natural. And when I say natural, I mean what's more natural when you see things. Like when you see a color, you don't see it, the word red. You don't see R-E-D. You see the color. You recognize it. The subconscious goes, it recognizes it as that color. Maybe there's a different shade of it. Maybe there's a different shade of it here and there. Either way, there's a spectrum of red. But the brain knows that it's a spectrum of red. We just call it, maybe say, oh, that's different red. It looks like it's a lighter red. Doesn't matter what the words are. But what's happening is we're stuck in that level of label instead of saying just that. So when we absorb things, this is part of what's called language acquisition. When we acquire things, it's what the brain, specifically the lower part of the brain, the older, more primordial part of the brain, named the reptilian. Doesn't matter what it's called. Doesn't matter if scientists or neurologists or neurolinguistics or whatever you want to call them, they try to break things down. It's like, no, you didn't get it right. Whatever. What the fuck ever. Okay? That what matters is that is what's real. But we've forgotten about the base foundation, and where we can create that flow, and that's where it starts, the recognition of that. That's why when we do hand signals and all these things, in other words, it's very natural. So that's the point I'm making, is that really it's that thing where there's still a lot of us that get stuck in that. I'm still a little bit stuck though. I still do, to be honest. I still look at some textbooks. I've learned though that to compensate for the fact that sometimes I get into this, like, I just kind of like want to know, because there's that conditioning of being human, that it's like, I just want to know. I just want to know the answer. It's like cheating on an exam. I just want to know the exam. You're cheating. So cheating is not the bad thing. But the big question here again, is it separation? Is it leading towards separation, or is it leading towards wholeness? Wholeness means like all that's natural, all that is embracing, all encompassing of everything. That includes this as well. So we can cheat. Right? So that's okay to look at a book and say, okay, I personally just reduce the amount of translation that happens. I only probably ever have translated if I need to, let's say I'm looking at a book story right? And I want to get, I want to get good sources for acquisition. I want to get like, so it's like, oh, I just watch. So I look up the translation for cartoon in that my target language, and I just do that. But the rest is because I'm just looking at it. The translation that I do is a means to an end, and that's it. That's it. Then everything else becomes like this. Okay, whatever I intuitively see, that's I intuit it and I instinctively feel it. And I'm like, okay, they got the story. Am I, I mean, this is there's more to it than this, but the point is not whether it's less to it than this or more to it than this. The point is, I think we've forgotten to be connected to both instinct and intuition. And we got stuck in this whole like narrow-minded analysis. There's nothing wrong or, with analysis. There's not separation, but it's become separation when that's all we're focusing on. The separation is like the whole piece of puzzle, right? And you're just taking one piece and that's it. That's exactly what it is. So, yeah. So far I've mentioned 3 main things. I'm sick and tired of it today. But the goal is that I realize myself, it's like that whole like, is it leading me to separation? Or am I leading myself to separation? Or am I leading myself to wholeness? Is it towards wholeness? So, yeah, that's all for today. Thanks for listening. No, nothing else to say. Maybe there'll be more later. I don't know what it is, but this will be just an expression of what I feel like needs to happen a lot more. Comments, if you want comments, if you have any questions, and I really mean that because it's like I'm willing to go from here. In terms of like, because I feel like this is all connected. This is all connected. Whether you're talking about the language thing, it's all part of the awakening process. How we recognize things, what we do about it, it's a personal journey. And for me, in this personal journey of mine, this life, is to be the best that I can be. Is to be as whole as I can be. Really. That's what I mean by best. Be as whole as I can be. Not forcing anything like as if it's like, oh, I need to be whole because otherwise I'm not good. Like, that's what the fuck? It's like, no. I mean, but even then, that in itself, like the questioning of itself is valid because it means that we are, even if we're stuck in labels, even if we're stuck in certain things, being stuck means that you realize, if you are aware that you get stuck, it means it's an awareness. It's like, oh, now it's time to move. There you go. So that means it's like a sign. So being stuck isn't necessarily, again, bad. Okay, it's part of the process, right? It's called delay. It's called being, stunted, like growth, like stunted growth, whatever, right? It's part of being human. So the goal is really towards wholeness is learning to be open and then eventually come to becoming like this sort of natural thing, and also becoming more like a return to the natural thing of accepting what is. So, thank you for watching. I'll see you guys later. That's all for today. Bye.